Are you ready for the annual Social Connections Summit? It's happening August 5th and 6th. This year's summit theme is all about building trust and connecting authentically. That's in both your personal and professional life. Experts, coaches, and social wellness practitioners from all over are going to gather to this one spectacular event to help bring the joy of connection, community, and camaraderie to you. If in your personal life you feel unsupported with your current social circles, or if you don't have a group of peers that are close to you in age and share your interests and lifestyles, if you feel shyness or anxiety when meeting new people, this event is for you. It's going to help you improve your personal life. And in your professional life, if you feel more like an outsider than a team member in the workplace, if you feel like you don't have peers at work that know what's important to you, or if you feel like you always have to go along to get along, you need to be at this event. I promise you, you will leave empowered with skills and knowledge to create the social, emotional support that you need in both your personal and professional life. You don't have to just be friendly at work. You can actually be friends. Come find out how. Early bird tickets are on sale now until June 1st. Early bird ticket holders will receive a private, personalized one-to-one coaching session from up to 3 different coaches of their choosing. That's right, early bird ticket holders will receive private, personalized coaching. If you've been afraid to invest in a coach, this is your opportunity to test drive. If you want an experiential learning environment like none other, where you're going to gain insight from world-class professionals, be empowered by personality tests like the Enneagram and DISC assessments, and have an opportunity to network and share your experiences with others who feel exactly as you do, get yourself to the annual Social Connections Summit happening August 5th and 6th. Go to patternsof possibility.com to get your tickets, or check the link in the show notes. I'll see you there. Hey, what's going on? My name's Coach Lee Hopkins. My pronouns are he, him, his, and you're listening to the Patterns of Possibility podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to helping you replace harmful patterns with new possibilities. In each episode, we'll explore topics that inspire you to be yourself, live your truth, and make lasting connections. In this episode, we're going to talk about developing a rapport. It's all about getting close to people that you see most often. And depending whether you're looking to develop this in your personal life or professional life, it can look a little different, but the elements are just the same. And it's going to help you build a better relationship with the people around you. More trust, who wouldn't want that? Are you ready? Let's go. All right, developing a rapport is really important, of course, because it builds trust. And the rapport is essentially the act of creating a friendly, harmonious relationship between 2 or more people. It involves mutual support, understanding, and empathy. And building a rapport can make the communication flow well and help you accomplish important goals. So, one key component is trust. Well, you have to have trust, honesty, and openness. But you really do have to be able to share your thoughts and feelings with another person. So to build rapport, it's a slow process. It's a slow build. It's an intentional build. It doesn't have to be terribly slow if you are kind of like not intentional about what you're doing. And this is not about building a rapport fast. This is just about building a rapport period, the elements that you need to do so. Honesty, openness, and trust. So let's start with this openness. It's vulnerability. It's the same thing. You have to be able to talk about things that are important to you. And it's not trauma dumping. It's not oversharing. It's not just talking without having the other person receive, like talking to a brick wall or anything like that. Openness is, I think about how some people might overshare, and think about it as having a heavy weight of emotional energy or something emotionally heavy, and you take it and you've been carrying it for a very long time, and you just kind of toss it to this person. I'm open. Here you go. You throw this 50-pound weight towards them and they drop it. They drop it because it's so heavy. that's not a great way to build a rapport because they weren't even ready for you to throw it. So it requires some mutual understanding, right? They weren't ready for the weight. It's too heavy and you didn't even check. You didn't even know. So you're not going to build a rapport that way if you are too open. And then there's honesty. Of course, you want to be honest about your thoughts and feelings. And some people are really intense with the honesty and they hide it under the guise of just telling the truth, but they'll say something mean and rotten and nasty to you. And that's just telling the truth and just telling it like it is. Like, sure, be honest, but you can also be kind. You can just be kind. Honesty doesn't have to hurt someone. You can be kind and intentional about sharing your own impact or sharing your point of view rather than like sharing how you've been impacted rather than trying to insult or degrade. So honesty. And then there's this really important thing called trust. Trust that they have your best interest in mind. So when you share, when you're open and you're honest with them, that they are going to do something admirable or they're going to be kind with the truth and the honesty and the openness that you've presented to them. So those are the elements of rapport. And the key is building it, trying to build that with people that we don't know very well. And if it's in their personal life or professional life, how do we do that within the boundaries of your personal and professional life? Because it's a little more difficult and tricky in your professional life because there are more boundaries, there are more guidelines of what you can and can't say, what is openness and honesty and trust. But outside of that, in your personal life, you can talk about anything and everything that's comfortable to you. You can take it up to the limits that you have. The thing about your personal life, and I'll look at this one first, is that if you don't know what your boundaries are, you don't know what their boundaries are, you're going to have a little bit of a difficulty creating rapport because then you're going to start throwing things that they're not ready for. You're not paying attention, you don't know, or maybe they don't know what their boundaries are, so it may be difficult for you. The point I'm trying to make here is that there's a difference between the personal and professional life, and we're looking at the personal life. This is what I'd recommend. Definitely openness, honesty, and trust have to be built. The openness, I recommend that you share some important pieces of who you are. It's important to share you, honesty, just not too much, not the 50-pound weight. You're not throwing anything at them. You have to pay attention to see if they're even ready for this stuff. So what I do is I have this story. I have stories that I tell about myself to see how they'll respond to that, so I can build rapport with them. I call this the GIST method. If you've ever been to one of my webinars, you'll know about the GIST method. If you've ever been to my website, I talk about the GIST method there, and you can learn more about it. But the GIST method it stands for JIST. It's JIST. It stands for joyful, important, secure, and truthful. And what you want to do is tell stories about what's joyful, important, you're secure about, and it's the truth. You share that with them. That's openness and honesty right there. You share that with them, and it's lighthearted. That's why it's joyful. It's lighthearted. It's not meant to be a traumatic story that you've had. And what you're doing when you share the gist of you is you're helping them, or you're letting them know more about who you are, for sure. You're being open and honest. But you're also checking to see if they're capable of handling your joy and what's important to you. You're looking for that before you even go any deeper. You want to check to see if they're able to handle your joy, because that is the one emotion that we're all attracted to. We want that joy. We're excited about doing things that are interesting to us and not so excited, and we procrastinate with the things that we don't like, right? So the joyful things is what we want to do. And you want to check to see if you have the same sense of joy so you can build rapport. It's going to be easier for you to find that they like board games just as much as you do because you told a story about how you went and you play in board game tournaments, or you funded a board game Kickstarter, or you and your buddies used to have a board game night before the pandemic. You can build an easy rapport with them if you discover some of the things that you have in common. And you can discover those things that you have in common by sharing you, talking about the things that you like, talking about the things that you enjoy. Gravitate to that first. So for your personal life, you can talk about those things and then make it deeper as you go along. You can talk about more impactful things in your life as you continue to develop the relationship. But you definitely want to continue talking about yourself and also encouraging them to talk about themselves and listening to what they say. Listen for the joyful things that you can connect with. You want to make sure to be able to do that. So it's in your personal life, and that can easily translate over to your professional life. I would recommend that you do the very same thing in your professional life. It's just that you can't talk about everything. You can't talk about the weird things that your family might do that might get you side-eyed or whatever, that gets you into trouble. And you know what those things are. You got to keep it above board. You got to keep it PG because you're in the workplace, right? You're in the workplace and you've got to follow those guidelines. Don't talk about things that might get you into trouble, that might get you with the HR. So once you start building those kind of connections, you want to make sure to continue to do it. So you want to nurture the connections. You start by telling a story about who you are, something that's interesting to you, so that you can talk about things that are joyful. I do not recommend that you try really hard to figure out what they like. I don't recommend that you do that. I recommend that you talk about the things that are important to you and continue to talk about the things that are important to you to see if you can build a rapport with them, because you don't want to change yourself in order to fit in. So it requires openness and honesty and trust. And if you can't be open about the things that are important to you, you can't be open about your joys, then you are going to have a difficult time building rapport. You're not going to be interested in them. It's going to be difficult. So to apply this at work, of course, use the GIST method, talking about the JIST, GIST method. If you don't know what to talk about, I have journal prompts you can download at my website, parentsofpossibility.com. But use the GIST method to talk about things that are important to you. So that's step one. That's the first thing. And you want to continue doing this. You want to continue talking to them. You want to continue bringing up things that they have talked about. This is how you build a rapport. So you're sharing and you're listening. You're listening for what they say to you, what's important to you. Look for those joyful and important things and continue to follow up on them. Continue to call back on them. Like, all right, yeah, you said that you were going to go out this weekend. How was it? Or what did you do last week? How's your kids? Stuff like that. You want to make sure to continue talking about those things. And you want to do this because it is important to get to know this person, to feel like you can trust them, right? When you do this, over time, you will inevitably create shared experiences where you're talking to each other about something that has happened. They're gonna be able to talk about more work-related stuff to you, how they might feel about the work that they do, how they might feel about the things that they do at home, and you can create these shared experiences. Now, I always say connection is how you feel about the experience. If you both feel the same way about the experience that you have, then you are going to feel connected, and that's a shared experience, right? You talk about the coffee that you have at work. I don't know, maybe it's the best coffee you've ever had, and if they feel the same way about it, then hooray, you've got a shared experience. Or maybe it's not the best coffee and you both feel the same way about it and you make a joke about it. There you've got a shared experience. Or something that happens. You can be inside and connect with each other and build a rapport as long as you pay attention to what they say, what they feel about what they say, and be on the same wavelength. Be willing to reflect that back to them. And you will create a nice rapport with people. At its core, I think rapport is the creation of an environment that's so familiar and comfortable that you can both predict each other's behaviors, your actions, and your attitudes in a very pleasant and joyful way. I'll be right back with the Reddit friendship advice question. What if there was a way to gauge how well your social connections are going to support you? Maybe you've listened to this podcast many times and you kind of wondered, maybe you think your friendships aren't that bad. Maybe you think that they can do better. Wouldn't it be great if there was a quiz or something to help you find out? Well, there is. And that's why I'm talking to you about it right now. Just go to patternsofpossibility.com and you'll find my quiz to gauge how well your social connections are going to support you. That's in your personal life and professional life. Aren't you at least a little bit curious? Go to patternsofpossibility.com and take your quiz to find out if they're going to be able to support you when you need them the most. Alright, now it's time for the Reddit friendship advice question. If you have a friendship advice question that you think I should answer, tag me in it on Reddit. My handle is Brilliant and Resilient. That's Brilliant, the letter N, Resilient. Okay, this time I went to a different subreddit to check this out because I wanted to talk specifically about work. How do I keep to myself without being perceived as rude? I have a boss who has a really bad case of, quote, I am your equal, we can discuss anything, unquote. And then acts really weird and crazy when I try to have a candid conversation with her about thoughts or ideas that I have about work stuff. For example, I have a coworker who is using her aides as a shield from being fired for unprofessional bullying behavior. Yesterday, my boss hated her and I was a superhero. But today, my boss told me I'm just as bad as a coworker. She overshares and encourages me to as well, which is bizarre and makes me feel uncomfortable. Recently, I realized we're overly friendly and I would like to back off and set some boundaries with her. I want work to be about work and want to keep more defined roles since it's confusing for me to know how to carry on conversations with her anymore. She's kind of giving me whiplash and sort of making me think she's trying to coerce me into talking shit sometimes. I struggle with social interactions myself, talking a lot when I'm anxious, having a hard time reading between the lines, etc. So I apologize if the solution is obvious. I just can't see a way around this without her calling me out. Okay, and then in the comments, the poster said, frankly, I'd rather only talk about work tasks that need to be done. She talks to me all day about her personal life, including her marriage and sex life, and I just don't want that. Poster, none of us want that. None of us want that. Wow, that is insane. So I had to laugh at this because I'm not in the position and it feels uncomfortable, I'm sure, for that person to be there. It's like, oh my God, the sex life? Like, yeah, gross. I mean, I don't know. I talked earlier about crossing the line in your professional life, and there it is. It's like really far across. It feels like a trap that the boss says that I'm your equal because they want to build a rapport. That's the thing. They want to build some kind of rapport. I'm your equal. We can discuss anything. We can talk about all the things. Not really. There is a peer-to-peer relationship, and then there's a peer-to-supervisor relationship. And this is where we get messed up, where we want to build a rapport, and you can build a rapport within those kinds of relationships. When you have a peer-to-peer relationship, you have an equal amount of power and authority and understanding when it comes to your roles at your job. A supervisor to supervisor or leader to leader relationship is a peer-to-peer relationship. Because you both have experiences at the job that you both can understand, you both probably have teams that you lead, and you understand you can talk to each other about those things on that level. There's information that you will share between you two that you will not share with your team, right? That if you're building this peer-to-peer rapport, there's something between both of you and relates you to your experiences together at work. It's not necessarily for anybody else outside of work. And there is a power balance between you two that is equal, right? Those are your peers. This relationship with the leader and the teammate or the team member is not a peer-to-peer relationship. It's not. You can build a rapport in those kind of relationships, but it takes a little more tact and understanding of the power structure between the two. Like saying, hello, hey, how's it going today? Talking about the things that happen outside of your job, not sex, because it's uncomfortable for the other person. It's uncomfortable for both people involved. In fact, it's something that our corporate, it's frowned upon in corporate, just period. It's frowned upon. And so you have to understand the power structure of it. You have to understand the power structure. Like, some people aren't comfortable talking about those things, and they don't want to, and they don't know how to talk to you about it. They won't know how to protest or reject or say no, because there's a power structure in play that frightens them into saying nothing. You can't build a rapport in those kind of relationships. When you build a rapport with someone, you talk about these things that are, I don't want to say benign, but that's the first word that comes to my head. They're not intensely emotionally responsive topics. They're not intensely emotionally responsive. And I talk about emotion a lot. I talk about how there's 4 different kinds of emotion that most people can identify pretty easily. There's joy, there's anger, there's sadness, and there's fear. And if you have a rapport with someone, you are really focusing on sharing any of those emotions, but mostly intensely the joy. You usually share the joy. If you have a positive connection with someone, you're going to talk about the things in your life that bring you joy, but also they bring joy to the other person that you're speaking with. You have a rapport, a real connection, where you both feel the same way about the things you're talking about. I hope that makes sense to you. So I'll say it one more time. You have a connection or rapport with someone if you both feel the same way about the things you're talking about. So in the case of this supervisor, this leader, I'm not going to call him a leader, the supervisor who is managing the team member, they do not feel the same way about the topics. They don't have a rapport. And the power structure comes into play here, because the person who doesn't feel that way cannot just say, I don't like this. I don't want to talk about this, without fear of retaliation, without fear of something happening. But you can build a rapport with people in these cases. You can build a rapport as a leader to as a teammate, to your teammate. You can build a rapport with those people as long as you're talking about things that you both feel the same way about. So you have to do a little bit of digging and discovering and sharing a little about you to watch and see the reactions to those things. And they can't be intensely emotional. I recommend that you start with something that's really easy. Of course, small talk, we talk about the weather. We talk about the work that we have today, the things that you have in common. We talk about this one client who was just a pain in the butt, and both of you are feeling the same way about how stressed you were about it. There you go. Build some rapport with these people who are always stressed out. They're stressing out and they're bringing their stress to you. You can build rapport talking about those things. I like to build rapport about things that bring joy, though. I like to build rapport about, well, the successes that we have at our job. If you feel the same way about those successes, then great, you're going to have rapport. The good job that you did, that's an easy way to connect with a coworker or a leader. We're talking about leaders and teammates, but also coworkers too. You're fired up because you did a great job at something. You're happy about it. Both of you celebrate. Can build a rapport every time you celebrate or have a success at work. You can build a rapport with someone by talking about those things. But if you want to build a deeper connection with people and you want them to know you authentically, you have to start talking about some of the things that happen outside of work, because your life is not work. There are things that happen outside of work, but you may spend most of your time at work with people, and if they don't know you, it's going to feel like a miserable place. You're going to feel left out because they don't know who you are. You're going to feel like they don't care about your well-being because they don't know you. And of course they don't care about your well-being because you don't talk about anything that happens outside of work. And if you did talk about things outside of work, you're bringing your heavy emotional drama and you're throwing it at people like it's a 50-pound weight. Boom, here you go. Here's something that really tragic that happened, or here's something really frustrating, a fight with me and my partner. Here, I'm going to share all that stuff with you. It's too much. Dial it down. There's a technique to this. Dial it down. And then you feel like nobody wants to talk to you. Well, of course, you're throwing these 50-pound emotional weights at people and saying, here, catch. It's too much. It's too much. So we're still talking about this connection or the rapport, building a rapport with people at work. And that could be with your leader and your teammate. Building a rapport revolves around the main idea. It revolves around sharing something about you and checking to see if they have the same emotional response to you. So you can talk more about that thing. If it's safe, if it feels good, if you both like it, you feel the same way, then you will naturally find yourself moving in more towards the conversation. More in because you want to share more, like, oh, this person feels the same way about it. I do too. I've got a story to share. I've got something to talk about, and you'll naturally feel that rapport. That happens over time, but the most important thing is that it happens with intention. You have to be intentional about sharing little pieces of you with others. So if we're looking at this, the connection with your teammates, if we started to look at that and you wanted to build rapport with people on your team, I would recommend that you think of some stories or something interesting that happened to you, and they're lighthearted, but share those with them and avoid complaining. I'd ask that you avoid complaining and talk about things that bring you joy. But there are 4 emotions, and if you can focus on those things, you can pivot around and move and think about some stories that you might have associated with those emotions. The joy, the anger, the sadness, and the fear, like having a really great time at the family picnic, the joyful experience. You share that with someone, and perhaps if they have a family, they'll talk about some joyful time, or you can prompt them and ask them about a joyful time they had with their family. If you want to build rapport, you have to be intentional about talking about you and getting another person to talk about them and creating a safe space so that you can share and actually demonstrate that you care for each other's well-being. Right? So let's return our attention to the 50-pound weight that the supervisor is throwing around this life and that, and just changing their mind and creating this emotional chaos in the workplace. I think that I'm not in their position, but I think that somebody else needs to be involved in you sharing how you feel to this supervisor, because I don't think that they're going to like you telling them that you don't want to talk about work stuff. You only want to talk about work stuff. I don't think they're going to like that. I think they may retaliate and do something ridiculous because that just seems to be their mood. One thing, I feel this way today and I feel that way the next day. And I know I only read a few lines of text, but that seems to be consistent with a person's behavior. If they're not able to read the room, they're always thinking about what's happening with themselves and not paying attention to the experiences that you're having when you're talking to them. They're not paying attention to how you might feel or even considering that. Then it may be a little difficult to share with them that you don't like this, because they're going to take it as a slight, or they're going to be offended and do all the things that people do with power. So I would say that somebody else needs to be involved, like HR, and perhaps a conversation with HR to talk about this. And maybe you don't want to get people in trouble. I don't know what your feelings are about that, but I think some advice, some input about this, if you just let it go under the radar, if you just try to ignore it, it's going to build up on you, and you're going to have some hard times at work. You're going to be frustrated more often than not, and you may quit or you may lash out at this person. But I recommend that you share with somebody sooner rather than later about the situation and get some support in resolving it, because you do have a right to close that space where they're trying to give you so much of their life. You do have a right to close the space. If you don't want to have that deep of a connection with them, because it isn't even a connection, honestly, they're just talking at you. A rapport is different. You both feel the same way about the conversation, right? Or the topics that you're talking about. You feel the same more often than not. And you can also talk about these things that make you uncomfortable. You can also share your feelings with people. And you can't seem to do that because of the power structure and how the person is altogether. So get some help. Reach out to HR. Reach out to somebody else who's in a better position that can support you if you want to make a change. Redditor, thank you so much for asking your question. I know that you didn't ask me to answer it, but I did, and I hope that it helps. Best of luck to you. Take care. My name is Coach Lee Hopkins, and you have been listening to the Patterns of Possibility podcast. You can find me at patternsofpossibility.com and on all social media at Patterns of Possibility. And as always, I want to encourage you to be yourself, live your truth, and there you'll make lasting friendships.